employees at Wall Street firms than they were Fed watchers. They had to figure out on a week-to-week basis, as best they could, where they thought the Fed funds rate would be trading, just from watching the money supply as well. So that was a different way of doing it. It ended, of course, when Volcker left and they went back to the old system, but that was his contribution to the mechanics of monetary policy.
How was he so sure that it would work? Because indeed it eventually worked and it got adopted, and this is what we think of now. Communication might be slightly different, but it's generally the Volcker principles that are adhered to. How did he know this?
He didn't know that it would work, and he had said that since, that he was doing what he thought he could do. His job was to attack inflation, which at one point went nearly to 15% on the CPI, and he was looking for something different that would increase confidence and be simple to explain, and would also impose some discipline on the policy process rather than just having people at the Fed guess at where the rate should be. But he didn't know it was going to work, and he says he certainly didn't know that the U.S. base rate would go to 20% at one point.
And Mike, his resurgence in the last decade in particular, he never really left, but his resurgence in terms of a force with regards to regulatory policy has really left its mark on the current economic and financial service regulatory structure of today. They still are every day talking about the Volcker Rule.
Well, Dodd-Frank is a very big, very broad set of laws and regulations that affect the financial industry, but only one of the regulations is named after a person, and that is Paul Volcker. His idea that the Wall Street trading on its own behalf was not good for the economy and for the financial system was codified into law. It's being modified now, but it will be forever known as the Volcker Rule. But you're right, Kevin, he did play a role for a very long time as sort of an eminence grise, and Barack Obama turned to him in 2009 when the economy was at its bottom and put him in charge of a committee of CEOs and business leaders to give a business perspective on what should be done for the economy. So he helped lead the reforms that were put into place and represented the administration up on Capitol Hill. But just the end of a long career that began in 1952 when he became an employee for the first time at the New York Fed.
And just even to follow up on that, I mean, in the current administration, at the beginning of the administration, there were some of those CEO type of forums, and one could argue that that was one of the legacies that Paul Volcker had, was uniting those CEO leaders. Do you think that legacy could return sometime in the next decade or so?
Well, you'd like to see it. It has to be done by someone outside of the Federal Reserve. Could be a retired Fed chairman, and we have a couple of those now. But at this point, it isn't clear what they contribute in terms of actual advice, whether they're united enough. We do have the Business Roundtable. Jamie Dimon from Wall Street chairs that, and they did change the way they look at business. It's no longer only to make a profit. It's to help employees as well. So maybe we are seeing a legacy effect that carries on.
And he was internationally recognized as somebody who could be extremely fair, extremely rigorous. So, for example, some of the other things that he accomplished in his life was overseeing the payment of claims by Swiss banks to Holocaust victims, for example. Also, the UN Oil for Food program, they were programs that he oversaw.
Well, it's an interesting transition that he made in the sense of he came into office known on the financial side, but not known to the rest of America, became very, very well known as interest rates went up and created a lot of enemies. People did not like what he did because mortgage rates went way up. A lot of businesses were hurt. And of course, we had a couple of recessions. But ever since then, as inflation and interest rates continued lower and lower and lower, his reputation was rehabilitated, and he was seen as somebody who did what he thought was the right thing instead of giving in to political expediency. And that burnished his reputation enough that people put him in charge of these other projects.
And as serious as he was also a very funny man. Michael, I imagine you have some anecdotes from your times covering him in Washington, D.C.
Well, you have to hope that you smoked cigars, because if you were going to be around Paul, you were going to get some cigar smoke.
All right. Michael McKee, thank you. Michael McKee, our international economics and policy correspondent. Paul Volcker, dead at the age of 92.
coffee shop, cashback, cat flaps, cashback, beanbags, rucksack, hire car, buy a car, flapjack, cashback, dumbbells, cashback, takeaway, holiday to anywhere the sun is at, bum bag, laptop, big match, hatchback, binge watching, paintballing, crab fishing, cashback, anything you want to buy, everywhere you want to go. Guess what? Cashback. Whatever you spend your money on, get money back every time with the American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Minimum annual spend to receive cashback. Terms apply. 18 plus subject to approval.
Did you know BT's business broadband comes with an always connected guarantee?
Always connected? I can't guarantee that. Nobody can.
BT can.
No, it's impossible. What if a squirrel bites through your cable?
That's when the 4G backup kicks in.
4G backup?
Yup.
Oh. Well, squirrels can't bite through 4G.
Exactly.
BT Business Broadband with the always connected, squirrel-proof guarantee. BT, beyond limits. Subject to availability. T's and C's apply.
This week at Tesco, buy 2 items from our chilled party food range, like tempura prawns or mozzarella sticks, and get a third one free. So for every 2 people you invite, you can ask another for free. But who? Linda from Accounts or Julio from Magaluf 2010. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Cheapest item free selected stores while stocks last, ends 1st of January.
This is someone making an online booking at Ford.co.uk using the words Ford20 so they can service their Ford for £20 less. And this is someone who didn't get their Ford serviced. You see, at Ford, we use Ford genuine parts and Ford trained technicians. Plus, if you quote Ford20 when you book with us online, you can receive £20 off. Book now at Ford.co.uk or visit your local participating dealer. Ford service. No one knows your Ford better.
Retail customers only. At participating Ford dealers. Cannot be used with other promotions. T's and C's apply. Search Ford service for more information.
Forget the cheese, basket, and socks this holiday season and get the ones you love and even the ones you just kind of like. A subscription to TuneIn Premium. With TuneIn Premium, you'll be giving them the gift they can enjoy all year long. Featuring live NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB games, commercial-free music, and even podcasts. TuneIn Premium brings the best in audio to you. This year, we're making Santa's job a whole lot easier. So forget the stocking. Stuff their phone with TuneIn Premium. Search Premium to upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Hey, can't watch the big NBA game because your life's just too busy? I've got some news for you. TuneIn Premium is the answer to all your problems. Hear every home and away game live or on demand everywhere you go. Just search NBA to listen.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
Hey, TuneIn listeners, Steve Kornacki here from NBC News. I want to tell you about a podcast I'm hosting called Article 2, Inside Impeachment. It's dedicated to bringing you the latest developments on the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I talk to NBC News reporters who are closest to the story to break down what's new, what matters, and what it means for the 2020 election. Search and favorite Article 2, Inside Impeachment on TuneIn.
Calling for the snap. He finally gets it. Throws a pass. Back in the end zone. Leaping one-hand catch. Touchdown.
Tonight, TuneIn has your Monday night NFL football with the New York Giants at the Philadelphia Eagles. Kickoff at 8:15 p.m. Eastern.
Got a block at the 10, inside the number the 5. Breaks a tackle. Into the end zone. Touchdown.
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium.
Receiver in motion. Handoff goes to the running back. Touchdown, Carson. Easily.
Upgrade today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
To eastern Ukraine, as well as eradicating corruption. But he came here with a very low expectations, but also a very long shopping list. And above and beyond anything, he wants another prisoner swap, as well as return of control of the Ukraine-Russian border to Ukraine. And then after that, withdrawal of Russian-backed rebels, withdrawal of heavy weapons. But then on the other hand, you have Vladimir Putin, who woke up this morning probably not in a very good mood because he received word that the World Anti-Doping Agency has banned Russian athletes from the Olympics and the World Cup. So we just saw the first images of the leaders, the four leaders meeting, and it was quite extraordinary to see Putin and Zelensky for the first time across from each other.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, these pictures are absolutely so dramatic. And to see Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel there as well, clearly there must be something behind the scenes that are giving hope to these leaders. I mean, they wouldn't meet in Normandy format in Paris, extend all of this hospitality if they didn't think something was going to come out of this, and that perhaps Europe would end up looking like the bigger between Europe and the US.
Yeah, well, the stakes are very high, obviously, and this is the first time that these talks are taking place, not only with Zelensky, but also with Zelensky really without his main benefactor, the United States, the White House. So a lot of people, including myself, have written that has put him in a very weak position. But having said that, you also have Vladimir Putin, who is very well known for playing the long game. He can go home with any agreement or no agreement whatsoever and sell it to the Russian people as a win. But I am very worried, Vani, about Zelensky because if he doesn't go home to Ukraine with some sort of win or victory, if he's seen as capitulating towards Russia, his political life could be very severely shortened. Already, there have been protests on the streets of Kiev warning him not to capitulate against Russia. So he's in a very, very difficult position.
Well, here in Washington, D.C., he's also at the eye of the political impeachment storm. And so I'm curious in terms of the international geopolitics of this, if Macron and Merkel are really going to be mediating anything, because Putin really would have his own agenda as it would relate to this very high-profile meeting, given the timing of such, with Zelensky.
Yeah, well, what a bizarre past few days, right? We had Rudy Giuliani going to Kiev to continue to dig up dirt on, the Bidens, and also every 2 seconds saying that Ukraine is a corrupt place. Then fast forward a few days later, and you have these hearings going on today, split screen across the Atlantic in Washington, and then also these meetings here. So it's drawn a lot of attention away from these meetings, but at the same time, I guess if you can take anything out of these hearings is that the Ukrainian story has gone out, that, the conflict has gone on for so long, and maybe that kind of more informative public, if you will put pressure on these leaders to bring an end to this terrible conflict. Look, the thing with Macron and Merkel, it's probably their last kick of the can, if you will, on this issue. And I think they feel morally obligated to finally bring an end to this conflict and to put pressure on Putin to do so. But they at the same time, Macron needs to, there are strikes right now in Paris, as you know. He needs to pander to his public, maybe the block on French dairy products to Russia. And then Merkel is hungry for Russian gas and doesn't want to pressure Putin too much either. So very complex situation.
And I can't let you go without asking you about the other development from Putin's perspective, which is the issue of the Olympics and the ban. And so this, on a day in which that news is breaking, Vladimir Putin now at the meeting with some of the top world leaders, how is that, if at all, going to cast a shadow on the meetings?
Right. Well, knowing what we know of Vladimir Putin, this strikes him at the heart more than anything else, more than sanctions, more than leaders shying away from him, like at the G7 or the G20. It's something that he can't go back to Russia and say, oh, this is nothing to the Russian public, because this is something that the Russian public, I think, will really react to, is that this is shameful that our Russian athletes have been put in this position. And I think, just quickly, I think it'll further work to isolate isolate Russia, both in the mentality of the Russian people and also in terms of their leaders. So we'll see how that plays out. But it did not turn out to be a very good morning for Vladimir Putin today.
All right, global affairs analyst Michael Moserque, thank you very much for joining us from Paris. Coming up, President Trump may be getting renewed pressure over his business dealings. That's all next in our legal segment. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
We could call it Bloomberg Awesome, but Bloomberg Best is accurate and less embarrassing to say.
Analysts are raising questions about rising competition and higher costs.
June Grasso and Ed Baxter.
It is the first company to go public in the space tourism industry.
Bloomberg Best.
That was AutoNation CEO Cheryl Miller.
Weekday evenings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
A happy dance so common with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm Kevin Cirilli in Washington.
And I'm Bonnie Quinn in New York. The Judiciary Committee's latest impeachment hearing is underway. And Kevin, I've been trying to keep an eye on Live Go because it really is a phenomenal thing to watch the procedural, things that are going on in Washington, D.C. right now. It will be over, though, most likely by later on today, correct?
Yeah, and just in terms of just going in terms of where this is all headed, midweek anticipating the drafts of those articles, with the vote still anticipated by the end of the calendar year. And then from there, there's going to be a back and forth with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. They are going to try to come up with rules. If Leader McConnell can't work with Democrats, it'll just be a party line vote, Bonnie. But that's the next legislative fight in terms of the process. And then a 6 to 8 week trial anticipated, and behind the scenes for the past at least week and a half. And I say emphasis on at least. Republicans at the various senatorial levels and the committee levels are already trying to, what they feel is, offer a defense for President Trump for that 6 to 8 week process.
Exactly, and we should know how President Trump feels about the whole thing because no doubt he will be tweeting about it. Now, he is facing impeachment on Capitol Hill, but he's fighting a number of other legal battles that extend way beyond Congress. Bloomberg's June Grasso and Greg Farrell join us now with more details. June.
Thanks, Vonnie. 3 subpoena cases are speeding their way to a possible showdown at the Supreme Court, and I say speeding in legal terms, not in regular people's terms. So, Greg, 3 appellate courts ruled against President Trump on these subpoenas. There were different subpoenas, but the reasoning was basically the same. Tell us about that.
Yes, exactly. One comes from a House committee wanting to see, Trump's business records going back several years and his tax returns. Another comes from the district attorney in Manhattan, Cy Vance, who's pursuing a, potential criminal case into, that involves payments from the Trump organization. So there have been different, as you say, different nuances in the appeals court's rulings in favor of the people who want the returns, and basically discarding the president's arguments that he's either above the law or this would constitute some kind of an inhibition on him as being able to carry out the duties of being president. But consistent with the president's, and as a real estate mogul, Donald Trump's long-standing behavior and responses to other challenges throughout his career, he's very litigious, and I think just the fact that he's been able to push this off and extend by weeks and then months and possibly well into next year any final resolution through the Supreme Court has been, to some extent, a victory in a short term for him now.
Right. I actually made a graph to try to keep track of where these three cases are, because one is already at the Supreme Court. The justices are going to be talking about that on Friday. One, he's already appealed to the Supreme Court, filed the papers, and the other one, he hasn't filed the papers yet. So when the justices talk on Friday, it's about Cy Vance's subpoena. How likely are they to take the case?
I think there'll be some internal pressure to take it just to resolve this matter, because it's a matter that goes beyond just this particular president and will extend, well into the future. Because of the way things work, the legal machinations against the president this time are bound to be repeated when the other party takes power next time. This is just going to set a precedent. So I think there'll be some interest by the Supreme Court to actually resolve or lay down a marker on this. I don't know that. I'm just guessing.
I know, and I think you're right there. Now, President Trump's attorneys keep saying this is a case of first, and it is a case of first, but there were the cases before the Supreme Court involving Presidents Nixon and Clinton. So even though they're not directly on point, do they give a little bit of guidance to the court or some kind of precedence?
Yes, I would think so, especially in the case of Nixon, where one of the reasons Nixon resigned was after there was a Supreme Court ruling that he would have to turn over the recordings he had made in his own office. And I think he knew that was game over for him, and that led to his resignation. So it was a Supreme Court decision basically, allowing the House Investigative Committee to, get evidence that could be used against him.
And so we will find out on Friday whether or not they're going to take, perhaps on Friday, you're right.
Right, they'll have the arguments, and I think, it'll be expedited no matter what. So possibly by Christmas, they'll actually decide whether or not they're going to take this.
This is breakneck speed for the Supreme Court, though. I mean, to have gotten these cases up, these cases were decided in November and December.
Yes. So the reason it's so quickly, I think, is because they realized a lot is at stake here. It does affect not just the impeachment, but also the election next year. So rather than drag this out so that it comes out next October 1st, a month before the election, I think it's in everybody's interest, including the Supreme Court, to get this resolved and clearly as well before the election next year as possible.
And we should mention that these have nothing to do with the impeachment. These subpoenas were before the impeachment. So now, in addition to all these disputes over his financial records, which he's trying to keep secret, there are two appeals courts that this week, one in D.C. and one in Virginia, are going to decide whether or not, or at least hear oral arguments to decide whether or not these emoluments lawsuits should go forward. So explain the emoluments cases, because they're tricky.
Yes. Briefly, two district attorneys in Maryland and Washington, D.C. have filed a suit against the president, against the Trump organization, basically the president accusing him of violating the emoluments clause in the Constitution, which forbids someone using their office as a way to make money. And although the fact that Trump is president, the fact that he owns this high-quality hotel in downtown Washington has turned that into a magnet for businesses coming from all over the world. And the lawsuits basically claim that he's taking money away from other hotels and restaurants that would be doing this business. And the argument is over whether or not this really is an emolument or whether or not it's just something, the president's a businessman and he can't stop doing business.
All right. Well, we will find out more about those this week. Thanks so much. Back to you, Vonnie.
June Grasso, thank you for that. That's Bloomberg's June Grasso there. And, of course, Greg Farrell. Coming up, Balance of Power continues on Bloomberg Radio. We're also watching markets. As you see, we're having just a little bit of a drop for the S&P 500. They're down about 0.2% right now. Still, though, several stocks higher. Freeport-McMoRan and some of the retailers up more than 3% apiece. And we have some Apple suppliers up 2.5%, Qorvo and Skyworks as well. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. The owners of the New York Mets are in talks to sell up to 80% of the Major League Baseball team to billionaire Steve Cohen, who is already an investor in the club. The transaction would value the team at a baseball record $2.6 billion. His deep pockets may give hope to long-suffering Mets fans, but the transition will take at least 5 years. In other deals news, Francis Kering, owner of Gucci and Saint Laurent, has held exploratory talks with Moncler about a potential deal for the Italian skiwear maker. Adding Moncler and its $2,000 puffer coats would help Kering keep pace with larger rival LVMH, which recently agreed to buy jeweler Tiffany for $16.2 billion in the biggest ever luxury deal. In China, as the birth rate slows, pets are being pampered to the tune of $29 billion a year. That's 19% more on gourmet meals and fancy squeak toys than last year. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Full breakfast, cup of coffee, whatever you have in the morning, have it at daybreak.
What's the outlook for the pound if there is another election?
Nathan Hager.
The U.S. could still delay those tariffs?
And Karen Moscow.
It is the fifth major industry player to make some sort of zero commission offer.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Bloomberg has more from Hong Kong.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
Please be done.
over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Now 1 p.m. on Wall Street, and we have weakness in equities. Trading today is very thin. The week ahead is brimming with potential catalysts that could move this market one way or another. We've got a central bank meeting, actually a few, along with a looming headline in the U.S.-China trade war. Right now, the S&P 500 down about 0.1%. Trading in the S&P overall volume now about 21% below that 30-day average. Dow Industrial Average is down about 0.3%, and the NASDAQ Composite is weaker by about 0.1%. SoftBank Group has tapped Goldman Sachs for some new financing to help SoftBank revive one of its biggest bets. This would be an investment in the office sharing company WeWork. We are told Goldman has arranged $1.75 billion in a line of credit for SoftBank to target WeWork. Let's take a look now with the action in American depository receipts. Dave Wilson is here. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Doug. You're not seeing any more direction in ADRs than you are in U.S. shares. In fact, the S&P ADR index is little changed, while the S&P 500 is down 0.1%. Sweden's Assa Abloy has fallen 2.7% in U.S. trading. The lockmaker was lowered to neutral from the equivalent of buy J.P. Morgan. Data compiled by Bloomberg shows Assa Abloy now has only 2 buy ratings compared with 11 holds and 11 sells. The UK's total oil has tumbled 65% to just 33 cents per ADR. CEO Paul McDade and Exploration Chief Angus McCoss left the energy producer, which scrapped its dividend and reduced its production forecast. Now, South Korea's LG Display has climbed 10.7%, and Taiwan's AU Optronics has gained 5.6%. Both makers of flat panel displays were raised the equivalent of buy from hold at Morgan Stanley, which forecasts higher product prices next year. And Argentina's YPF has risen 4.8%. President-elect Alberto Fernandez of Argentina named economist Guillermo Nielsen as chairman of the state-run energy producer. Nielsen is a proponent of shale drilling in a region called Vaca Muerta, or the dead cow, Doug.
All right, Dave, thank you. Let's take a quick look at this hot headline that we're getting now from the Bloomberg terminal. The Department of Justice, the watchdog, has found no bias or spying against the Trump campaign. We're going to have more on that when we check global news coming up on Bloomberg Radio. Right now in the bond market, U.S. 10-year Treasury with a yield of 1.82%. I'm Doug Krisner. That is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We're going to grow our trade relationship.
I know what's broken. I know how to fix it.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race.
We've got now a real crunch few days for Brexit.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships.
The administration is trying to create a new divided world.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm Kevin Cirilli, Chief Washington Correspondent for Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg Radio, filling in today for David Weston. So much to get through, but first, breaking news. The Department of Justice, the Inspector General, releasing the report on the FBI surveillance surrounding the 2016 election. The Justice Department Inspector General releasing the report and saying that there were no major mistakes made by the FBI, the FBI made major mistakes in Carter Page surveillance, according to the DOJ Inspector General report. Again, red headline, crossing the Bloomberg terminal now. The FBI made major mistakes in Carter Page surveillance, according to the DOJ Inspector General report. We will bring you that as it continues to be unveiled and deciphered through. Again, red headline, crossing the Bloomberg terminal, that that Inspector General report, eagerly anticipated here inside of Washington, D.C., has been released. Joining me now, Wendy Benjamin, Bloomberg 2020 politics editor. Wendy, let's start with the developments of the 2020 campaign trail over the weekend. Give us the latest for where things stand amongst the top-tier candidates, Biden, Buttigieg, Warren, and Sanders.
Bernie Sanders.
There you go.
Yeah, that guy.
We ripped up the script already with that breaking news, so I was catching my footing. Go ahead.
Let's see. Well, they're making their way out to Las Vegas now for the very important speeches before the Culinary Workers Union in Nevada. It's pretty hard to win the Nevada caucuses without the support of the hospitality industry workers, which make up most of Nevada. So they are, or at least Las Vegas, they're heading out there now. Warren speaks tonight, Elizabeth Warren. Joe Biden speaks tomorrow afternoon. For him, and Pete Buttigieg is skipping that event, which is a little surprising.
You know, what's interesting is that as we're talking about this, and the Inspector General at the U.S. Department of Justice releasing, are you ready for this? Their report. It's like more than 450 pages of this report, and it found that there was no major spying on by the FBI on the Trump campaign, which was one of the things that the campaign had pushed in the previous election cycle.
Right.
This will be fodder for these candidates out there on the campaign trail.
Oh, absolutely it will, although they might decide to take a page from some of the Democrats' advice books and say that let's just focus on the Ukraine call and impeachment because Russia and Carter Page and all of that is getting to be a little tiresome to voters. They feel like it's been litigated and it's over. So they might just say, okay, fine, that's what the DOJ says they did. Now let's talk about Ukraine.
So one of the endorsements that Joe Biden got over the weekend was from former Secretary of State John Kerry. Take a listen to what John Kerry said for Joe Biden while campaigning with him on Friday in Iowa.
I know that this man is the person who's prepared on day one to do what we need to do, and I know he can beat Donald Trump.
Is John Kerry going to help Biden out there on the road?
You know, that one's kind of hard to tell, and it's been a bit of a head scratcher for me because John Kerry ran against a Republican incumbent and lost in 2004. He's a very successful senator. He did a lot as Obama's Secretary of State, but when he was up against a Republican incumbent president, he whiffed it. So, you know, I'm not sure exactly what he brings except to say that the Democratic establishment seems to be coalescing around Joe Biden, although the Democratic establishment coalesced around Hillary Clinton, and we all know how that turned out.
And then meanwhile, there's this other report out. You and I were talking about this before we got on air. Wendy Benjamin, Bloomberg 2020 politics editor, and that's about Elizabeth Warren. She made $1.9 million dollars as a bankruptcy lawyer, but it was over 24 years. And some in the Democratic Party are trying to attack her and say that she made money by being a consultant. It's $1.9 million over more than 2 decades.
Yeah, it's a long time. So when you spread it out, if you look at the details, it's like $76,000 here from one client and $50,000 from another client. So it's just, you know, if you take most upper middle class, I guess, people's income over 25-30 years, it's going to add up to be over $1 million over time. This is part of a growing feud between her and Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah.
You know, he worked for McKinsey, but as a young man, he was in his 20s. Of course, he's still a young man, but, you know, younger man in his 20s. And he has non-disclosure agreements, so he hasn't been able to reveal exactly what he did. But, of course, this being a campaign year, that hasn't stopped Elizabeth Warren from asking.
I was chatting with some folks over the weekend, Wendy, and they were surprised to see how quickly the Warren campaign came out and released these documents, almost as if to say, nope, nothing to see here. We were prepared for this type of attack, and we are going to release it. Pete Buttigieg, well, I mean, you know, maybe most folks don't know what McKinsey is outside of the Acela corridor, but, you know, maybe.
No, it's a big national consulting firm.
It's a big national consultant. That's one way to describe it.
And he worked for a lot of different clients that McKinsey had, but he says he needs someone to break the non-disclosure agreement, and so far McKinsey hasn't been rushing to tear up the paperwork yet.
Do you think that's going to hurt him? Does that political attack have legs?
In the long run, I don't really think so. I think it could be an awkward week. You know, it could come up at the debate. It could affect his debate performance, but I don't think over time most voters think of this as a really inside the beltway kind of spat, and that it's, you know, his work in South Bend, his work in the Navy, whatever else he says on the campaign trail that they'll care about.
And Sahil Kapoor's got this great story out on the Bloomberg terminal. Biden-Buttigieg dream of Congress unity runs into D.C. skeptics. You know, I'm an optimist, Wendy. I like to...
That's why we counterpoint.
But, you know, Biden running on this return to normalcy argument. Buttigieg running on this generational future argument. But, you know, there's skeptics, I guess, here inside of the Beltway who don't like that.
Well, and there's also an entire generation of voters who, you know, have never seen the sort of things that Joe Biden is remembering, like him working with Republican Virginia Senator John Warner to derail Robert Bork's nomination to the Supreme Court, or Orrin Hatch, a Republican, working with Ted Kennedy, a Democrat, to get a lot of education legislation passed. Those days are history. Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton put a nail in that coffin. They're not coming back to bipartisanship. And a whole generation thinks that that's like, horse and carriage stuff.
So, again, if you're just joining us, that's Wendy Benjaminson, Bloomberg 2020 politics editor. We're following breaking news. The Inspector General at the Department of Justice really squashing those conspiracy theories with regards to the FBI spying on the Trump campaign. The Attorney General, William Barr, has rejected the watchdog's finding and the backing of the opening of the Russia inquiry, calling it, quote unquote, intrusive. Much more on that ahead, plus the latest on 2020. You can download the Bloomberg Radio podcast as on a host of different platforms, including by downloading the Bloomberg Business app. We have the latest with regards to the Department of Justice, as well as international politics. I'm Kevin Cirilli, Chief Washington Correspondent for Bloomberg TV and Radio, and this is Bloomberg.
What do you count? Interest rates?
If you get marginally higher interest rates, does that bring the PE multiple in?
Trade figures?
China driving a tectonic shift in the availability of money.
Employment data?
What is happening with the headcount?
You could just leave all that to us.
Is it a one-and-done tariff adjustment?
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell. Right where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
3, 2, 1. Oh no. Which button am I?
When every second counts, you can't wing it.
Guys, a little help up here?
In a home fire, you may have less than 2 minutes to get out. So make a family home fire escape plan. Then practice home fire drills at least twice a year so everyone knows what to do when they hear. Prepare your family at ready.gov/fire drill. Brought to you by FEMA, the Ad Council, and Make Safe Happen.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but Miss Araceli, she gave me direction.
At age 47, Marco finished his high school diploma.
50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Dear Dad, Merry Christmas. Thank you for always doing everything you could to make this time of year special for us. No one has a Christmas jumper collection quite like yours. Your festive spirit is...
Gingerbread latte with 2 shots and nutmeg whipped cream for Joe.
I hope it snows. I know how you love a white Christmas. All my love, Joe. Heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Download the app and get 20% off when you buy a card and gift this Christmas. Use code HEARTFELT20. Exclusions apply.
Forget the cheese, basket, and socks this holiday season and get the ones you love and even the ones you just kind of like. A subscription to TuneIn Premium. With TuneIn Premium, you'll be giving them the gift they can enjoy all year long. Featuring live NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB games, commercial-free music, and even podcasts. TuneIn Premium brings the best in audio to you. This year, we're making Santa's job a whole lot easier. So forget the stocking. Stuff their phone with TuneIn Premium. Search Premium to upgrade today. Your holiday travels just got a lot better with a subscription to TuneIn Premium. With sports, music, news, and podcasts for the whole family. It's the gift that will really move them. Search Premium to upgrade today. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards. At the goal line, it's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
From ESPN and the award-winning producers of The Sterling Affairs comes the latest season of 30 for 30 podcasts. 4 brand new stories of espionage.
He wanted this team to be the Barcelona of women's basketball.
Resilience.
I started to scream. I tried to get away.
Corruption.
It's the culture of win at all costs.
And rebirth.
How will we ever rebuild it?
30 for 30 Podcasts, Season 6. Listen now to 30 for 30 Podcasts on TuneIn.
Along the goal line, Martin scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Calling for the snap. He finally gets it. Throws a pass back in the end zone. Leaping one-hand catch. Touchdown.
Tonight, TuneIn has your Monday night NFL football with the New York Giants at the Philadelphia Eagles. Kickoff at 8:15 p.m. Eastern.
Got a block at the 10, inside the number 5. Breaks a tackle. Into the end zone. Touchdown.
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium.
Receiver in motion. Handoff goes to the running back. Touchdown, Carson. Easily.
Upgrade today.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
We're seeing a little bit of weakness in stocks today, although to be fair, trading is very thin. The week ahead, though, is full of potential catalyst. We have a couple of central bank meetings, including the Fed, and a looming deadline in the U.S.-China trade war. Right now, the S&P 500 is weaker by a little more than 0.1%. Volume in S&P trading today is about 21% below that day average. And if you go within the S&P, we're seeing weakness today in healthcare, utility, and industrial names. On the positive side, consumer staples, consumer discretionary, and real estate stocks trading higher. Overnight, we had very weak data for China when it comes to exports. That's only creating a little bit more concern about the global growth story. The big question, though, for markets, will the U.S. go ahead with those planned increases on tariffs scheduled to occur on December 15th? Right now, the offshore Chinese yuan down about 0.1% against the dollar. Dow Industrial Average weaker by 0.3%. As I mentioned, the S&P down more than 0.1%. And in the NASDAQ market, the composite index is weaker by just about 0.2% right now. And the U.S. 10-year Treasury with a yield of 1.82%. I'm Doug Prisner. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm Kevin Cirilli, Chief Washington Correspondent for Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg Radio, filling in today for David Weston. And breaking news on the Bloomberg terminal, the Federal Bureau of Investigation acted properly when it began a broad investigation into whether then-candidate Donald Trump or people around him conspired with Russia to interfere in the 2016 election, this according to the Justice Department's Inspector General. Again, this was something that the administration had questioned, but the Justice Department's Inspector General releasing that report within the last 15 minutes. And they say in this more than 450-page report, quote, the FBI had an authorized purpose when it opened the probe to obtain information about or to protect against a national security threat or federal crime, even though the investigation also had the potential to impact constitutionally protected activity. This according again to that 434-page report released Monday by the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz. We'll be following the latest reaction on that front as well. Again, the FBI Inspector General, or the Justice Department Inspector General report finding that the FBI did not behave improperly during the investigation stages of that 2016 election. Joining us now on the phone to follow another developing story, Jonathan Schanzer. He is the former Treasury Terror Finance Analyst and Senior Vice President for Research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Jonathan, thank you for being here, joining us. On Friday, according to the Associated Press, the Saudi gunman who killed 3 people at the Pensacola Naval Base had apparently gone on Twitter shortly before the shooting to blast U.S. support of Israel and accuse America of being anti-Muslim. Of course, this is in the middle of the investigations following that shooting on Friday. But what does this mean come this week for U.S.-Saudi relations?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It obviously is not a great development from the Saudi perspective. They have been on something of a charm offensive, trying to woo the Trump administration. They want to work on trade. They want to focus on some of the reforms that have been enacted inside Saudi Arabia. They've been trying for years now to try to distance themselves from that kind of bad rap of having a radicalized population or an anti-American population, and then here you have this incident that takes place, which the FBI is calling a terrorist attack. The bottom line here is that this does appear to be somewhat personal in nature. You have this Mohammed al-Shamari was apparently mistreated by his flight training instructor, who had been calling him names and I think making fun of him in front of his class. I don't expect this to stop Saudi students from coming to the United States to train on our hardware. I think it's incredibly important that we maintain that process, but I think it does probably cast a shadow a little bit or cast a light rather on the need to do more rigorous background investigations into people who are here and who are based in military installations.
Well, it also just immediately brings up the skepticism that runs within the American political system up on Capitol Hill frequently as well, about skepticism with regards to U.S.-Saudi relations that, date decades, but, in recent history, post 9/11, and of course with the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. So how can the new Saudi Crown Prince he's going to have to navigate this, but how does he do that? How does he win back the trust of so many skeptical lawmakers in both parties now in the Capitol?
Yeah, look, I think you nailed this on the head. I think the Saudis face an uphill battle really in Congress. I don't think the problem is within the White House. I think the president and his advisors are inclined to work with Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, and with this Saudi government. And I think to a certain extent they've gone a long way to try to show that they are going through some stages of reform. The problem is, of course, as you mentioned, Jamal Khashoggi, this journalist who they killed in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. We're just a little bit more than a year out from that event. And you have members of Congress that are not willing to let that go, nor are members willing to let go of the fact that the Saudis have really prosecuted a rather awful war in Yemen. It wasn't that their enemy was the wrong one to target, which is the Iran-backed Houthis, but rather that the way they carried out that war and the kinds of mistakes that happened, the civilians that were killed. And so you have a lot of unfriendly faces in Congress. And my sense here is that you're going to have this split between Congress and the executive on Saudi Arabia on this issue, on the Pensacola shooting. It's going to be an extension of this ongoing debate. The only issue really does, again, that I think we'll need to address is how much vetting needs to happen, how much background investigation needs to be ramped up for those that are still based here because of the lingering concerns about future attacks.
Jonathan Schanzer's on the line. He's the former Treasury Terror Finance Analyst. And just quickly, in the 30 seconds or so that we have left, Iran unveiling a new budget that they say is going to resist U.S. sanctions, but they got like a $5 billion loan from Russia, and they're having to raise taxes. What's the latest with regards to the sanctions against Iran?
The sanctions continue to take a real bite out of the Iranian economy, regardless of what they get from Russia. What the problem really has been is their accessible cash reserves, or even semi-accessible cash reserves. Because we've dried up their ability to sell oil, they're in a lot of trouble. It's why they're turning to Russia. But I would expect inflation to continue. I would expect all the economic indicators to drop.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jonathan Schanzer. Much more politics and policy. I'm Kevin Cirilli, Chief Washington Correspondent for Bloomberg TV and Radio, and you're listening to Balance of Power. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. U.S. stocks are lower as investors count down to Sunday's tariff deadline. The Dow is falling 69 points, S&P 500 down 3 points, the Nasdaq slipping 10 points. But Macy's shares are heading higher, despite Goldman Sachs downgrading the retailer to sell from neutral. An analyst at Goldman thinks there's not much upside potential for the department store. And it's getting harder than ever to afford a car. According to new data from Experian, the average loan amounts for both new and used cars set records last quarter. The average new vehicle loan now tops $32,000, and the average used car loan tops $20,000. And U.S. manufacturers expect to reduce capital spending by more than 2% in 2020, according to the Institute for Supply Management. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
What better way to celebrate the holidays than with a subscription to TuneIn Premium? With a bottomless library of the world's best audio, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
From ESPN and the award-winning producers of The Sterling Affairs comes the latest season of 30 for 30 podcasts. 4 brand new stories of espionage.
He wanted this team to be the Barcelona of women's basketball.
Resilience.
I started to scream. I tried to get away.
Corruption.
It's the culture of win at all costs.
And rebirth.
How will we ever rebuild it?
30 for 30 podcasts, season 6. Listen now to 30 for 30 podcasts on TuneIn.
Along the goal line, Martin scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man bleeds for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
I'm Kevin Cirilli, Chief Washington Correspondent for Bloomberg Television and Radio. We're monitoring the House impeachment trial underway on Capitol Hill. But first, we head to Doug Krisner for a check of the markets. Doug?
Hey, Kevin, we're seeing a little bit of weakness right now in stocks, although to be fair, trading is very thin. The week ahead has got a lot in the way of potential catalyst. We've got a couple of central bank meetings on tap, including the Fed. And then there's this looming trade deadline, at least where the tariff issue is concerned, that being December 15th. When the U.S. has the potential to increase planned tariffs on Chinese exports. Overnight, we had very weak export data for China. That's only adding to the concern about weakness in global growth. If you go inside the market right now, mentioned the weakness in the equity space, healthcare, utilities, and industrial shares leading the decline of the S&P 500. The S&P is off 0.2%. On the positive side, though, consumer staples, consumer discretionary, and some of the energy names pushing to the upside. Dow weaker by 0.3%, and the NASDAQ composite is down about 0.2% right now. The dollar slightly weaker against the majors. Offshore Chinese currency showing some weakness as well, with the offshore yuan at 7.0345 against the dollar, and the yield on the U.S. 10-year Treasury is now at 1.82%. I'm Doug Krisner. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm Kevin Cirilli, Chief Washington Correspondent for Bloomberg Television and Radio. I am joined now by Brad Moss. He is a partner with Mark Zaid. And just as a disclaimer, Mark Zaid himself represents the whistleblower at the center of the impeachment inquiry. But Brad has been walled off from the case, so he's able to join us. I'm also joined now by my colleague, June Grasso, who is out of New York. And June, there's so much going on with this impeachment and the legalities surrounding all of this that I'm going to let you ask the first question for Brad so that I can catch my breath.
Well, that's giving me a lot of credit there, Kevin. But what I have to say, and Brad, tell me if you think differently, but I think today's hearing is sort of almost too much. That we had the hearings on the facts, and then we had the law professors tell about the law. What are they hoping to accomplish today with more lawyers?
Well, so today it's more of the evidentiary record. And what you had previously, we had all those different hearings. First, you had closed depositions, and there was all kinds of leaked testimony that came out from that. Then you had the public hearings, but that was different fragmented pieces of the story. Now, they had to compile it all into the report, and they had the initial part, which was those law professors, those constitutional scholars, outlining how this works and outlining what is and is not an impeachable offense. But then once you've got the abstract legal concepts, you have to fill it in with actual factual evidence to determine if the existing factual record merits and implicates those types of legal concerns. And so that's what you've been seeing today. The reports have been drafted. The staff counsels are testifying in this lengthy back and forth to outline, for the majority, it's the Democrat staff counsels, and for the minority, it's the Republican staff counsel, outlining the basis of their factual arguments of why the president's conduct does or does not implicate impeachment. And so that's all that's been going on today, and it's leading up to the eventual votes that are going to occur on probably 3 or 4 articles of impeachment.
Right. So the next thing is the drafting of the articles, and Nancy Pelosi has already directed that they be drafted. How much of today how much do the articles depend on what's happening today, or are they being drafted already? A lot of them are going to be patterned on former articles of impeachment.
Yeah, so a lot of that is probably almost certainly already being done. What you're seeing today is part process and part public relations. So as part of this process, consistent with what happened in the Nixon impeachment inquiry and consistent with what happened in the Clinton impeachment inquiry, there are certain things that are supposed to be done. It isn't required by the Constitution, but it's something that the House rules and history and practice have always deemed to be necessary. That is, you lay out the law, you lay out the facts, you let the public see everything before it gets to a full vote on the House of Representatives. In the interim, they're already having, I'm sure, these articles of impeachment drafted, and they'll get ready, prepare for the eventual vote. So what you're seeing here is part just, historical practice, part explaining it to the public.
All right, and meanwhile, breaking news following a CNBC report, Democrats and the Trump administration have reached a tentative North American trade deal, and the USMCA vote could happen by December 18th. Again, CNBC reporting that there has been a USMCA trade agreement between the Trump administration and House Democrats, with the House set to approve USMCA by December 18th. A key development, if you're following on the trade front, that comes just 3 days after that deadline with the U.S.-China trade talks. Remember, December 15th is the date, the self-imposed date, where President Trump has said he would add additional tariffs against the Chinese if phase one is not worked out by December 15th. Again, CNBC reporting that there is a tentative deal between the Trump administration and House Democrats to vote on USMCA in the House by December 18th. Sticking with impeachment, Brad Moss, a partner with Mark Zaid law firm. What would need to happen, Brad, for there to be a significant shift once this gets to the Senate for Republicans to break with the administration? Because you know this. I mean, I was talking to folks all weekend who are Republicans who are saying that Republicans are no more going to change their mind than President Trump is.
Yeah, so the only potential, smoking gun, or as the president would call it, a smocking gun, that could possibly be out there that could potentially cause a problem for him within the Republican caucus in the Senate is if some of these individuals like John Bolton or Mick Mulvaney or Charles Kupperman or Rudy Giuliani are called to testify and actually testify in the Senate trial, because a lot of what has been undermining the House Democrats' argument here in the impeachment inquiry is that there's only so much firsthand information. A lot of it is either secondhand, or it's people who got fragments of firsthand information and ran with it and reached their own interpretations or assumptions. That includes people like Ambassador Gordon Sondland, who had partial firsthand information and partially kind of went rogue and had his own interpretations of what the president wanted. So if there's going to be a point where a lot of the more ethically, principled Senate Republicans start getting uneasy about their position in the Senate trial, it's going to be if these individuals have to testify. Rudy has to explain what he was doing. John Bolton, who we know was uneasy with this, has to explain what he saw behind the scenes. That could cause consternation and cause the equivalent of what we saw in the Nixon era, where a bunch of Senate Republicans went to the White House and said, "You're going to lose. Don't make us vote on this. Please resign." That's about the only circumstance which I see the president actually being removed from office.
Brad, they haven't decided yet on all the rules for the Senate trial. And even though the Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts will be there, he's not going to be making the kind of decisions that judges normally make. How much of what we hear at the Senate trial depends on how Mitch McConnell decides those rules?
Yeah, so a lot of it's going to depend on those rules, and there's going to be a lot of open discussion and debate. And I know you mentioned Chief Justice Roberts, about whether or not the Chief Justice has the ability to compel people to comply with the subpoenas, whether or not he can compel someone such as a John Bolton, who the White House says is immune from testifying, whether or not he can get involved in that. And the rules aren't really clear yet, because we've never had that situation. We never got to that point with Nixon. And with the Clinton era, the really only real fight over witnesses was people such as Monica Lewinsky, and they simply had off-camera testimony conducted, and then it was played for the senators during the trial. You didn't have this kind of current situation where you're fighting over issues of immunity of senior White House advisors. We don't know how this will play out yet.
It really is interesting. Just quickly, in the last 30 seconds or so that we have left, Brad, what's one curveball that you're watching for the impeachment saga?
Watch Mitt Romney.
Really?
Watch Senator Collins. If they they truly start voicing and expressing public concerns, then you have to start worrying if you're the president if they could lead a chapter to basically say to him behind the scenes, we're going to be hurt if you make us vote.
And that's what's crucial with what you just said is what's different between the Kavanaugh hearings and the dynamics is that they would have to lead a chapter, as you said. They'd have to create some type of coalition, which is another hurdle that Democrats would have to clear.
Right, but they could also, they only need 51 votes to do certain things. So who knows what they could do? It will be exciting.
Who knows? June Grasso, Brad Moss, and coming up next, we're going to stick with trade policy. CNBC reporting a tentative deal reached between House Democrats and the president on USMCA with a vote scheduled for 3 days after that December 15th U.S.-China trade deal by December 18th. I'm Kevin Cirilli. This is Balance of Power, and this is also Bloomberg.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
Christmas, a time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera, now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile, every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
What better way to celebrate the holidays than with a subscription to TuneIn Premium? With a bottomless library of the world's best audio, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Hey, TuneIn listeners, Steve Kornacki here from NBC News. I want to tell you about a podcast I'm hosting called Article 2, Inside Impeachment. It's dedicated to bringing you the latest developments on the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I talk to NBC News reporters who are closest to the story to break down what's new, what matters, and what it means for the 2020 election. Search and favorite Article 2, Inside Impeachment on TuneIn.
Along the goal line, Martin scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear Hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Move, and a shot, and he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
In the stock market and in life, everything can change from 1 minute to the next. Be the first to hear the latest money news and market trends with CNBC on TuneIn. Wherever your day takes you, listen to CNBC's full slate of programming, including shows like Fast Money, Squawk Box, and Mad Money with Jim Cramer. And when the next big business story breaks, CNBC lets you know with live updates and commentary. At the office, at home, or on the go. Search CNBC on TuneIn to listen.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today. Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
The swagger of a perfect dunk. The rush of a three made from all the way downtown. The adrenaline surge of great defense. Can you feel the goosebumps yet? There's nothing like live NBA and nothing like listening live on TuneIn.
Giannis down the lane to the rim, throwing right corner three. Another one.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season so you can be there when it matters most. Never miss the action as it happens. Hear the ball you love. Hear it live on TuneIn. Search NBA today to start listening.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
First trading day of the week, and we're seeing a little bit of weakness in equities right now. Trading, to be fair, though, is a little on the light side with volume in the S&P 500 about 20% below the 30-day average. S&P 500 right now down more than 0.1%. In the minus column, you're finding healthcare shares along with utilities, industrial names also weak. On the positive side, consumer staples, consumer discretionary, and some of the real estate stocks pushing higher. The Dow is off 0.3%, and in the NASDAQ market, the composite index is down about 0.1%. A lot of potential catalyst in the week ahead. We've got a meeting of the Fed and the European Central Bank, and then we have a looming deadline for the U.S.-China trade war, although Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue was saying the U.S. is unlikely to impose extra tariffs on a new round of Chinese goods. This would be worth $160 billion. Included in that would be toys and smartphones, set to go into effect on Sunday the 15th. But Mr. Perdue is saying that is highly unlikely at this point. U.S. 10-year Treasury right now with a yield of 1.82%. I'm Doug Krisner. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm Kevin Cirilli, Chief Washington Correspondent for Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg Radio. Breaking news on the Bloomberg Terminal. Speaker Pelosi and the White House are nearing a handshake deal on the new NAFTA agreement. The Trump administration and House Democrats are on the verge of announcing a handshake deal on the USMCA free trade agreement, according to people familiar with the negotiations, paving the way for approval of the deal as early as this month, while Democrats gear up for the impeachment vote. This coming following that CNBC report with the tentative date, according to CNBC, being December 18th. Andrew Bishop is here. He is a partner at Signum Global Advisors. He joins me now in the D.C. studio. He's an expert on all things U.S.-China trade policy as well as Hong Kong and Venezuela. But we're going to stick with trade. December 18th could be the USMCA vote. Oh, yeah, 3 days after, December 15th, which is the self-imposed Trump administration deadline on U.S.-China Phase 1. Wow.
Yeah, I think December 18th is going to be an important date. It's actually quite realistic and feasible in our view. The reason why both Democrats and the Republicans want to get USMCA done this year is so that they can attack 2020 and the campaign with sort of a clean slate and not have to dwell on this old deal that's still pending.
And meanwhile, according to a new CNBC report, they have issued a correction. CNBC has reported that the White House and Democrats do not have a USMCA deal. So I'll go with Bloomberg's reporting, which says that the Trump administration and House Democrats are on the verge of announcing a handshake deal on USMCA. So CNBC issuing that correction, Bloomberg reporting they're on the verge.
I think the important thing at this stage is that
more volatility in the. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean both parties are well within sort of reach of a compromise, and I think it's not going to be difficult for them to find middle ground before the end of the year. The problem is getting those compromises on paper and then signed and through Congress. So it's really a question of logistics almost.
It's so the trade front, the volatility in the market, just as a result of trade policy on the host of different fronts. Last week we were focusing on France. This week we're focusing on USMCA and China. So many different fronts. That's what's driving the market movement, not impeachment. So let's just take it back now to the U.S. and China and the impact that the Hong Kong protests, which have also weighed on the U.S.-China phase one.
Yeah, I mean, the Hong Kong protests this weekend were definitely very large, historic in that sense. But I think the important thing is that they were peaceful for the most part, overall, most part. And therefore, the risk of a sort of Chinese military intervention has now gone way down. And I think that Hong Kong per se is not going to be an obstacle to a U.S.-China trade deal.
So you don't think it's going to be?
It will not.
Why?
The main reason is that both parties have an incentive, the U.S. and China both have an incentive to reach this sort of middle ground deal of phase one, as they call it, to really be able to move on to the next step and avoid further escalation, even if things plateau and don't get much better after that. So they both have an incentive in sort of, kicking this aside and making sure that Hong Kong doesn't spoil the trade talks.
So what has been what you think to be the largest unknown between now and December 15th with China?
I think the largest unknown actually doesn't have to do with the content of the talks per se, but rather with the fact that President Trump might want to really push it to the deadline, push it to the very, very end to maximize U.S. leverage. And you could even theoretically see him, imposing the December 15th tariffs or a lower level of tariffs to really, really put the Chinese under pressure and then announce a deal a little closer to Christmas.
Andrew Bishop's here. He's the partner at Signum Global Advisors, and he just said something really interesting, which is going towards December 15th would maximize President Trump's leverage. Break that down for us, because the markets might not that might not be translated up on the street. Why would that increase the president's leverage?
So I think that there's this understanding that obviously if the president pulls the trigger on the December 15th tariffs, that won't be good for U.S. markets, right, and global markets. It's going to definitely have a drag down effect, but it would be even more destructive for the Chinese economy, right? And so the Chinese know that they do have an incentive to try to keep the president away from those tariffs. And I think it's really going to come down to the wire. The other thing to keep in mind is that President Trump has a strong incentive to add to the volatility, add to the noise, create as much fear as possible in the market so that when he does reach a deal with the Chinese, and we expect that to happen around Christmas, there's a huge sigh of relief and he's really perceived as a winner.
You're seeing that the December 15th cliff, I'm going to call it a cliff for lack of a better word, but we go off the cliff and then a couple of days later they reach the deal. That's what you're predicting.
That's exactly it. And I think there's this perception in the market that, the U.S. and China either reach a deal by Sunday or you'll have tariffs. And that's not so, right? You could very well have President Trump sort of get to Sunday, not reach a deal, but hold off on imposing the tariffs, give the talks a little bit, a few more days.
Have they signaled that could happen? Has there been any tea leaves? What tea leaves are you reading that would suggest that?
So one in particular is frankly just precedent. The fact that the president on multiple occasions has sort of reached deadlines and said, in my magnanimous capacity, I will hold off on imposing the further tariffs because talks are going well. So that's one possibility. The other is that he could impose tariffs, but lower than the December 15th announced tariffs, right? Something sort of in between that spooks the Chinese a little bit, but doesn't drive them away from the table fully.
And so what I find fascinating is that domestically here in the United States, you can't look at U.S.-China trade talks in a vacuum, because the USMCA issue, which is now increasingly looking like going to hit the finish line or the cliff at the same time as the U.S.-China phase one, and the CR to a lesser extent impacting as one. But the president is poised to have one victory or two victories on the largest trade issues, and could end the year either with just USMCA and volatility with China, or both.
Exactly. And I think, going back to this idea that he's sort of pushing the volatility and the headline risk, I think he has an interest in really making things look dire, so that when he does announce those wins, 1 or 2 or 3 wins, it really gives a boost to the markets. And that's our base case.
Can I throw you a curveball question? I mean, I know you follow Venezuela to some extent, and I'm just could you give us a quick update on where things stand in that regard? It hasn't been in the news as much.
No, absolutely. It's really simple. The opposition led by Juan Guaido, right, has really lost a lot of steam.
Including from President Trump?
I think and this was part of our view about why Maduro would stay in power for so long, President Trump never cared about Venezuela as much as was reported. I think it was advisors around him and Vice President Pence that really cared about this. So the push to oust Maduro has lost steam. I would say, though, that we still think Maduro is very weak and not necessarily going to be sticking around for much longer.
Fascinating developments. That's Andrew Bishop, partner at Signum Global Advisors. We dealt with some breaking news, Andrew. Again, Bloomberg reporting that Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and the White House have neared a handshake deal on the new NAFTA agreement. Again, they have neared and are on the verge of announcing a handshake deal on the USMCA free trade agreement. And meanwhile, we started the hour with that other big development, the Department of Justice Inspector General report coming out and saying that the FBI did not act improperly in their investigations into the 2016 election. That does it for me. I'm Kevin Cirilli, Chief Washington Correspondent for Bloomberg and Radio, filling in for David Weston. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
Coffee shop, cashback, cat flaps, cashback, beanbags, rucksack, hire car, buy a car, flapjack, cashback, dumbbells, cashback, takeaway, holiday to anywhere the sun is at, bum bag, laptop, big match, hatchback, binge watching, paintballing, crab fishing, cashback, anything you want to buy, everywhere you want to go. Guess what? Cashback. Whatever you spend your money on, get money back every time with the American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Minimum annual spend to receive cashback. Terms apply. 18 plus subject to approval.
Leave a mince pie out for Santa this Christmas and you might find the whole pack disappears. At Asda, our extra special luxury mince pies are just £1.39. And our extra special slow gin mince pies are only £2. Well, Santa might like to try something different. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. 6 pies per pack.
Forget the cheese basket and socks this holiday season and get the ones you love and even the ones you just kind of like. A subscription to TuneIn Premium. With TuneIn Premium, you'll be giving them the gift they can enjoy all year long. Featuring live NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB games, commercial-free music, and even podcasts. TuneIn Premium brings the best in audio to you. This year, we're making Santa's job a whole lot easier. So forget the stocking. Stuff their phone with TuneIn Premium. Search Premium to upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
You're never as smart as you think
think in a bull market and probably not as dumb as you think in a bear market.
Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine.
We need those human skills to really get the true value out of the technology.
Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens.
Oh my goodness, Amazon. Right. They're going to take over the world.
Full transparency, we have one. We both use them, like them.
We each have one. We don't share a Peloton.
Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
And funny enough, we'll be talking about Pelotons a little bit later on, but maybe not in the context you might think. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, it is Bloomberg Business Week. It is Monday, December 9th, 2019. Carol Masser, along with my co-host Jason Kelly. We've seen some pressure on the equity trade today.
We have, and I think it feels like it's because we have a massive week ahead of us. Yes, we're toward the close of the year, but you think about the Fed, you think about the ECB, you think about elections in the UK, and there's this whole issue of some trade deals that need to get done.
I've heard about them.
Maybe.
So we've got lots to cover over the next few hours. First up, though, let's start with the Bloomberg Business News Flash and Doug Christner. Hi, Doug.
Hi, Carol. Hi, Jason. We're getting this hot headline on the Bloomberg terminal right now regarding Morgan Stanley. The firm is cutting roughly 1,500 jobs. They're calling it an efficiency drive, so this would represent roughly 2% of Morgan Stanley's workforce. You're right, Carol. Weakness in the equity market. Trading, though, to be fair, is very thin. If you look at volume in the S&P 500, we're down about 20% below the 30-day average. The S&P right now weaker by about 0.2%. Jason pointed out we've got a lot of catalyst in the week ahead. We've got a Fed meeting. We have a meeting of the ECB. And then there is the issue of whether or not we're going to see an increase in the tariffs on Chinese exports that were planned to kick in on December 15th. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue was saying earlier the U.S. is unlikely to impose extra tariffs. This would be on a new swath of Chinese goods worth an estimated $160 billion. And it would include toys and smartphones. Right now, Dow Industrial Average weaker by about 0.3%. S&P 500 down about 0.2%. NASDAQ Comp down about 0.2% as well. And in the bond market, U.S. 10-year Treasury right now with a yield of 1.82%. I'm Doug Christner. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Doug, thanks a lot. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, coming up later on this hour, we're going to check in with the president over at Manpower Group, get her sense of where we go from here, especially on the eve of the Fed meeting.
Yeah, exactly. And I find it interesting. Strong jobs report on Friday. Here we have Morgan Stanley cutting back 2% of its workforce. So I feel like, job gains, job goes back. We see job cuts. We see this kind of yin and yang out there.
Well, and speaking of workers and workers at a bank, Citi's got a new headquarters, and you mentioned Peloton at the top of the show. Maybe have a Peloton, some breakfast pizza. It's the most read story in the Bloomberg.
It is the most read story in the Bloomberg. So we'll get to that in just a moment. And sadly, of course, the passing of former Fed Chief Paul Volcker. We'll talk with our Christine Harper, who co-wrote his memoir. We'll get a sense, really, of the man behind the Fed. So looking forward to our conversation.
You're going to want to listen to that conversation. And if you haven't already, you're going to want to read her story. It is trending, and I predict it will be one of the most read stories of the day. A really intimate look. You really get to know someone when you're writing their book, and Christine did, and it's a really touching tribute to Paul Volcker, a large man physically, but even bigger in the context of central bank policy, politics, Wall Street especially. All right, well, let's set the Business Week agenda now. Joe Weisenthal's here, as is Dave Wilson. Joe, of course, is the markets editor for Bloomberg and the co-host of What'd You Miss? That's coming up at 4 p.m. Wall Street time. Dave Wilson is our stocks editor and the author of The Chart and the Stock of the Day. He'll be with us throughout the show. Dave, I want to start with you. You were making a comment as you sat down. As I said, the market seems to be taking a little leg lower. What's underneath the trade here? What's the one thing people need to understand?
Well, that deal making isn't enough to push up stocks. How about that? I mean, considering what we're seeing in the drug industry, you have these three cancer drug developers that have just taken off after making deals with major drug makers. Synthorix is one of them, up 170% after agreeing to a $2.5 billion takeover by Francis Sanofi. And then you have Arcule, the most active stock in U.S. trading, and that it's up 104%. They're going to be bought out by Merck. It's a $2.7 billion deal there. And one more for you, X-Biotech, up 72%. They agreed to sell a bowel cancer treatment to Johnson & Johnson. They're getting as much as $1.35 billion out of that deal, $750 million up front. So, you have that going on, yet at the same time, the market without much direction. Too many things to wait for, or so it would seem, with a Fed policy meeting coming up, with potentially higher tariffs at the
Investors
weekend.
need some resolution on these issues, right? And maybe by the end of the week, we'll have obviously some clarity because there will be some decisions.
Right. I mean, there's so much focus on where we go in terms of trade. Do we get a deal? Do we not get a deal?
Right.
And there has been sort of an underlying kind of speculation that something would happen to head off the next round of tariffs. I mean, because they were, put off with that anticipation. And now, maybe not so much.
Yeah, not so much. Joe Weisenthal, come on in on the conversation. Markets editor at Bloomberg News. Find him on Bloomberg TV at 4 p.m. So what is the one thing you think investors need to know? There's a lot of news on a lot of different fronts today.
Yeah, there is. And it's only going to get bigger, of course, throughout the rest of the week. Trade is going to be huge, like 5 days away from that December 15th deadline now. We're 6 days away. 2 central bank decisions, a UK election. This is just a massive week. And so, we're starting the week a little bit in the red, but it's quiet.
Yeah.
0.2% down on the S&P. Right. Not that big. Could get some USMCA news this week. That would be pretty big, but nothing is official there. This is just like, we're just getting started with this week.
So get ready, everybody.
Yeah. And remember how strong last week was.
Yeah.
So this is just pretty minor.
Yeah, and we were kind of all over the place. Some, concerns earlier in the week, and then not so much.
What's the thing you're looking at?
I don't know what's the one thing I'm watching. I don't know. What do you got?
I'm sort of looking at Wall Street culture writ large in many ways. You take the Morgan Stanley job cuts, you feather in this new city headquarters, you think about how Wall Street works, and then, amid all that, Paul Volcker, we talked about this just a minute ago, but I think we're going to be coming back to this again and again.